The first day in office is really doing a comprehensive review of the office. Who works there, what are their skills and experience levels, what is their salary, what is their job description, what are the needs of the office, and really working with people in the private sector and the public sector to come up with a roadmap, a document that will put the office on a path forward. And that means determining where the office is, but also really, I think more importantly, what it needs to really do the job better. So, for instance, there's actually 10 vacant positions in the office right now.
That also.
And again, I talk about we're coming out of one of the worst recessions, certainly of my lifetime, worst recession. And as I'm talking to people out there, people are looking for jobs. People want to work. They want jobs. They want good jobs. And so for this office to have 10 positions that are available that haven't been advertised, there hasn't been a lot of outreach, whether to college job fairs or fraternity, sorority organizations or community organizations, whether it's the NAACP or others, to hire these positions, filling those positions is going to be a top priority.
Okay.
Because if I can get 10 more people coming to work every day, we're going to get a lot more audits done, we're going to save a lot more tax dollars, and that's good for everyone.
Can you talk a little bit about some of the points of your plan? You mentioned them before when you were on, and I want to give everyone the chance to hear them.
Yeah, thank you. 2 weeks ago I launched, actually going on 3 weeks ago now, a 5-point plan to transform and modernize the office. And this is a document that we put together, really something we haven't seen in a long time for the auditor's office, where we took a look and looked at what's going on in other states, looked at best practices from the private sector, and came up with some new ideas for this office. Again, my opponent's been in office 25 years. He's really only running on doing more of the same. He's not really offering anything new. But this plan talks about using technology in new ways to find waste, fraud, and abuse, using technology to give whistleblowers a better way, a secure way to come forward. Right now, we're kind of looking at, late 80s, mid 90s technology, a 1-800 number, an unsecure website form, an email address. But we were talking about smartphones, that do everything for you, right?
Set the time.
Set the time. So, if you can take a picture on your smartphone and email it or upload it, there are platforms out there right now that newspapers are using, that nonprofit organizations are using, that give people the way to send information, send a picture, confidentially, securely into someone, so that then that information can be used to look for waste, fraud, and abuse. I want to bring something like that to the auditor's office that we don't have right now. Another thing I like to talk about is performance auditing. So, you can do a financial audit, a post audit, look at the balance sheet, look at the numbers, but really a performance audit is a tool that's used in government to find savings, to find efficiencies, to find waste, to find ways that we can actually save money. In the last 4 years, the current state auditor did 4 performance audits in 4 years. 1 per year. They're actually 1 done in 1 year, none in 1 year, 2 in another. But at any rate, 4. We should be doing dozens of these. And that is really where taxpayers are going to get their value out of the auditor's office. So, and as a last point, I'll keep going. The nonprofit community. A lot of nonprofit organizations get state funds. The state's grant and aid budget is $42 million. That money goes to volunteer fire companies. It goes to organizations here in the city that provide important social services. And a lot of times those groups just don't have the expertise or the resources to be able to put proper procedures and controls in place. And I think this is an area where the auditor's office can really be proactive, can go out to these groups, give them a package of policies and procedures, of controls, give them the benefit of our expertise and our expectations, and put that in place so that problems don't occur, or that if problems occur, they're caught a lot sooner. And what's kind of been the practice lately is to use the auditor's office to target certain groups, target vulnerable communities, find a problem and really kind of embarrass them, and that causes problems because donors aren't going to give to a group if they're in the newspaper in an article finding all these issues. So I say, why don't we harness the power of the auditor's office, go out in advance and help these groups get on top of it before it ever happens. It's going to help them in the private donor community. It's also going to make sure taxpayers know that their tax dollars that are funding these groups are being spent properly.
Right, and fairly. Would the state auditor's office, as it pertains to nonprofits, would the office take the position of actually training nonprofit organization leaders how to self-audit? Would that be something the office would be able to do?
Well, I mean, generally, with an audit, you always want the benefit of someone kind of coming in from the outside with fresh eyes. But I think certainly putting procedures in place, like for instance, just simple things like if one person writes the checks, another person should be approving the expenditures, right? And those two people probably shouldn't be married. Pretty common sense stuff. But a lot of the problems that we see with some of this grant and aid money comes from groups not observing simple controls and procedures, or just requiring a receipt or an invoice, or then making sure that you don't have double bill. You submit the credit card receipt and then you submit the real receipt, and then someone got reimbursed twice. I mean, that's a very simple scheme. It happens all the time. I think, again, if we were to go in and train not so much for a self-audit, but just to put the proper procedures and controls in place, that would really help a lot of these nonprofit groups.
What would you say, and I hope this is not putting you on the spot, but what would you say is one of the most surprising things you've learned during your campaign? Or something you just really weren't expecting to hear or learn?
Well, on a personal note, I'll just take this chance. It's just how many amazing people that I've met and come into contact with, and people who didn't even know me, 6 months ago, are now, giving me hugs and they're supporting me. And I mean, even just how I've gotten to know you and Michael. I mean, I think that's probably just kind of the amazing generosity of the people of our state and our city, and how I've gone basically from not having anyone know who I was as a candidate to kind of where I am now. That's been amazing. But I guess on a more serious note about the office, that's probably what you want. It's my time. I get to talk about it. I would just say just how few people understand what the auditor's office does and how important it is to them. Particularly even with school districts. Every public school district is supposed to be audited on an annual basis. These audits are supposed to be paid for by the school districts themselves, and this also includes charter schools. I mean, charter schools basically function as their own kind of mini school district, just with one school. And these audits haven't been done. I mean, the statute was amended in 1992. That was halfway through my opponent's tenure. These audits are supposed to be made accessible to parents and taxpayers by placing them in the libraries in the school district. And these audits aren't being done in a way that's accessible or understandable. And yet, education is a huge issue in our state right now, and particularly in our city. There's very controversial proposals out there, and people want to know now more than ever, how are we spending our education dollars? Yet they don't realize that the state auditor is supposed to play a significant and affirmative role in that process. And that's something that I want to do. I think that's a very important issue for the city.
Do you know when the last time the audits for the schools occurred?
Well, I mean, my opponent would say that it's done on an annual basis as part of the state's financial report. But that really is not telling us anything about how the money is being spent. There's also some very limited scope audits that have to do with construction or enrollment. But again, actually doing an accessible, understandable, comprehensive audit of each of the 19 school districts, as well as the charter schools, is not being done.
What does the next day and a half, 2 days look like for you?
It's busy, real busy. Not a lot of sleep, and the weather's supposed to be great on election day, and I think that's good, because everyone I'm talking to, a lot of people say it's not a presidential year, but I really challenge the assumption. I think people are going to come out and vote. I know that the people I'm talking to are engaged, they are ready, they understand the importance of this election, they understand the importance of showing up. We had a great rally last night with Senator Booker.
I saw the pictures.
From New Jersey. And it was a really cold, stormy night, but we had a great crowd, and everybody's fired up about voting. And not only voting, making sure their neighbors vote, their family votes, their kids vote, their parents vote, their friends vote, and I think that's that kind of peer pressure, and really that we're all in this together is going to bring the vote out. So a lot of what I'm doing, I continue to just try to meet as many voters as I can, let them know who I am, encourage them to vote on Tuesday, and that's what Tuesday will look like as well. I'll be going to, starting off with a pretty hearty breakfast early in the morning, and then going to probably, I think, 15 polling places throughout the day. At this point, I kind of go where I'm told, and just trying to, we've picked polling places that we think, are in key areas, and I'll just be meeting voters as they come in to vote, and I'll be voting as well. That's a highlight of my day. So
now, we haven't really talked about this before, and we only have a few minutes left, but I'm going to ask you what I would ask someone who's not running for office, who just comes on the program.
Okay.
What do you like to do in your spare time? Tell us a little bit about you.
Oh gosh, that's a fun question. Well, as I said, I'm on the crew of the Kalmar Nickel, so I love being a part of the ship and sailing on the ship and being a part of that group.
How long have you done that?
This is my 4th year.
Okay.
And I am an athlete. I love playing sports, everything from yoga to ice hockey and everything in between. And I'm kind of fooling around with learning to play guitar. And of course, I have my little dog and taking him for walks and going in the park. You've seen him on the video
on the
catching the frisbee. I can't take credit for teaching him to do that. He just kind of, if I throw it, he'll catch it. So.
And in your spare time, you design apps.
Yeah, that's my other in the spare time. Last November, I was a part of a project called Startup Weekend Delaware, and we built an app that helps with the legislative process. And I talked about, as part of my 5-point plan, how important technology is in the auditor's office and how I want to use technology more. And that's not just a campaign issue. That is a true passion of mine, and I've already done it with building my app called Whip Count.
So is that for, so people are using that now?
Well, we had it in testing in the General Assembly this last year. So it was being used earlier this year.
Okay.
Right now, because the General Assembly is not in session,
right.
We need to take some time, retool it, get feedback, and go from there and fix it. So make it better.
I have one more question. And I keep saying this, but I just don't want to put you on the spot. What happens to your law firm after you win?
That's a good question. A lot of people have asked me that. Being state auditor is a full-time job, and I will devote full-time to it. The other thing with my law practice is I practice before other state agencies. And it's pretty clear conflict of interest,
right,
if you're the state auditor with audit and subpoena power to be also representing clients before state agencies. So I will wind up my law practice, end of story, and devote full-time to being state auditor.
Okay. Now we have like 1 minute left. Is there anything else that you would like to get to the camera?
Well, yes. The one thing we've talked about a lot, but
right.
I talked about this yesterday, and I think a lot of people don't know this, but I just want to make sure that everyone realizes another thing that's important about the auditor's office, and that's the Board of Pardons.
Oh, and, yes, yeah.
The Board of Pardons right now has 5 members. It's the Lieutenant Governor, the Auditor, the Treasurer, the Secretary of State, and the Chancellor. And you think about it, the Chancellor and the Secretary of State are actually not elected. They're appointed by the Governor. So now, if Matt Denn is elected Attorney General, and he probably will be, looking that way, the polls anyway, we won't have a Lieutenant Governor, which means the Board of Pardons for the next 2 years will have 4 people.
Right.
And 2 of those people won't be elected by anyone in the state. So again, who the auditor is, who the state treasurer is, it's going to be really important, because even if there's 4 people on the Board of Pardons, it'll take 3 to actually grant a pardon or to take action on the board. So I think that's really important, and I mentioned this last night at the rally, and I think it's something that people haven't focused on, but they should really think about it in terms of why this election's important.
I know that Dave's giving me the wrap up, but I have just one more question. Can you talk a little bit about what the Board of Pardons does and why it's important?
Sure. The Board of Pardons is people, they've been convicted of a crime and they've served their time, and now they're trying to move on with their life. They maybe have trouble getting a job or getting a license because of the conviction on their record, and they're able to go through an application process. It's a lengthy process, and then wait for a hearing, and then get a pardon or whatever other action to move forward with their lives.
Right.
And I think that's real important, particularly for the city, as folks think about that, because obviously you make a mistake, you pay your dues, then you want to move on, take
Right.
care of your family.
Right.
I'm Brenda.